Okay, folks, happy Saturday. Get this in a position, in a more reasonable position. Man, it seems like it's really, really hazy. Let's see if it's... I don't know if that helped any. Maybe it didn't. Never know when your phone's going to get all hazy because it's in your pocket all the time and you're using your own fingerprints and so forth. Okay. So we're here with the gun crews that we have a whole slew of gun crewmen here for the weapons here. We've got several different things out here for the World War II Soviets. We got a 37 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. We have these green ones are all by Zvezda, and the gray ones are Plastic Soldier Company. So we have a seven, and this isn't actually all of them because the 76s are. We got. Well, let's not knock this down. That would be bad. We've got a few more in here as well. Couple of 3 crash booms and a 57 millimeter, but we're sitting these guys off to the side. We're not gonna work on them first. So we have a 76 millimeter infantry gun here by Zvezda. We have the 37 millimeter anti-aircraft gun, the 85, and all the gun crews that go for the Plastic Soldier Company. Anti-tank guns, which is a couple of the shorter barreled 45 millimeter guns, a longer barrel 45 millimeter, and a late war 76 millimeter infantry gun. And of course the gun crews that go with them. The gun crews we can interchange as we need because, you know, you need to have the figures around them that can be marked off at casualties, so. And, yeah, so one of the things we want to do is we want to do a final check. If you guys have been watching my feed recently, the house is kind of on the market. We kind of have everything tucked away, and I lost track of this, my Vallejo plastic putty. So I'm going to make sure that some of these figures don't need this putty. Mainly the Zvezdas. The Zvezdas they're not as good a fit and finish as the, at least on the figures, as the Plastic Soldier Company ones are. The Plastic Soldier Company ones, I think, don't have that issue, but you've got some guys like this guy that has an 85 millimeter. 85 millimeter. Let's see if I can get that close enough. He's got some gaps in there between the shoulders and stuff like that. We're going to try to fill some of that up in. So we're going to do that. While they're drying, we can work on the other stuff. We're going to prime some of the stuff black because this weekend we would like to get this guy done. And a full crew for them, which is going to include these 2 Zvezda figures and one of the commanders from the Plastic Soldier Company 3-man gun crew for the short 76. And that way we have kind of a short-term goal that we're going to try to accomplish to get something off the ground. Not that I feel any pressure at all, but it'd just be nice to have something finished. And I've kind of been hesitant to bring everything out in full force because, like I said, a lot of my stuff is just tucked away. The house is kind of in show ready, although this is definitely the messiest area of the house because, you know, I've got stuff that I'm working on. But I asked my wife, said, hey, you got a problem with this all being, hey, you got a problem with my area? And she's like, no, this is your area. I said, that's okay, that's cool. Because I don't want to be one of those people that, I've known those that to work on their hobby, they don't have like a permanent hobby space. And every time they want to work on something, they have to pull everything back out. And that pretty much keeps them from getting anything done of substance. I'm going to try doing something with this that I've never done before. And that is I'm going to add a little bit of water. You can cut this down with water. I don't want to put it directly on it. I know it's going to soak some of that up. That's okay. And I want to use a brush, but one that's not, that one is super high quality. Let's see if I can get it. I have a brush that's relatively small that is not, if something happens to it, I'm not going to be heartbroken. Nothing's going to happen to it. It's just going to get abused, so to speak, because this is not really meant for this. Yeah, okay, so we got like this little watered down paste. I don't think it needs to be full strength. It has some pretty severe mold lines on this figure. If they were that big of a deal, I wouldn't make such a big deal out of it, but they are pretty. It's actually working pretty well. Hey, good morning. And of course, this is going to get painted over. I think that's all that's really noticeable on this figure. None on this one. It's basically where the arms meet. And this stuff normally dries pretty fast, but I have it watered down, so I would imagine it's going to take a little bit more drying time, but it's not a very large amount of stuff on there. Not a whole lot of to dry. There was an article that I was trying to save. I came across it several years ago about how you can use melted sprue, the extra sprue that you're left in a model kit, and take some weld cement and kind of mix a paste and set it off to the side and use that to fill in the gaps. I don't know how effective that is. It sounds good on paper, but I couldn't find it. And I'm not sure how comfortable I would be with it, because at the end of the day, you are adding more solvent to the figure that could cause something else to be melted. I'm trying to be pretty proactive when it comes to not leaving fingerprints on the figures when I use the weld cement. And using tweezers helps tremendously, I have found. And but I'm kind of hesitant to do that. This is working pretty well. It's working a lot better than the Squadron white putty, which is what I used to use for many years. And then one of my viewers here turned me on to this Vallejo putty, which I've been using Vallejo stuff for decades now, but I just hadn't built models in 20 years. So some new developments have happened in that time, believe it or not. It doesn't seem like 20 years, but I didn't do World War II stuff for like 20 years, and I come back and all these figure manufacturers and things that I have that I bought when they just come out are all out of production, they're out of business. I'm like, what the hell happened? And you got some models that have consistently been produced the whole time, and you have some other things that have just disappeared off the face of the earth. Yeah, the fit and finish on these things are not, on the figures, is not very good in the arms. They don't fit flush up against them. Good morning, Mr. Glenn. Good morning, New Jersey. You made it to the weekend. Hopefully you don't have to work this weekend. Or hopefully you don't have to work at your normal job this weekend. I gotta go mow a lawn today. But it's just a back lawn, it's not very big. Well, in 1 week I'll be at our local convention. Local, it's still an hour and a half away, but in Orlando. So I'm at least gonna do one walkthrough video on that. I enjoy doing them, and I know other people like to see games as well. I can't guarantee there'll be anything awesome being played, but we'll catch it on film anyways. I wasn't signed up to play anything, and then yesterday I got a wild hair up my ass, and I said, well, let me go ahead and sign up for stuff that I wouldn't mind playing, and then I can just always not show up if that's the case, you know. But playing 3 games of Wings of Glory, which is funny because I just sold my Wings of War stuff recently, but I don't mind the game. I just don't want the stress of worrying about my things being damaged. You know, there's a lot of people like to play games with cards with like dirty hands. I don't mean just like regular your oils and stuff. I mean like, you know, let's go eat a pizza and let me play with your cards. I'm like, I don't need that kind of stress in my life. And I just don't have that amount of people around me that I can play, you know, a big game of that. You got to mow too. Okay. Yeah. So I've always mowed my own lawn until a year ago. I have somebody take care of the front because we replaced our lawn with a special lawn that supposedly is more resistant to insects, which of course is, you know, Florida is the land of insects. Although I feel like they haven't been as bad this year because I think it's just too hot for them. I just think they've been underground as much. But the front lawn is super plush. It's a special grass called zoysia. I think it's Japanese or something like that. And the problem with it is that it's so plush that when you mow over it, and we have a self-propelled push mower. I only have a third of an acre. And the house sits on it. It's a suburban neighborhood. When you mow over it, your tire that's on the end pushes the grass down, and of course it's not being mowed because it's outside the circumference of the blade. When you come back to overlap, it's so plush it's still pushed down, so it doesn't get mowed. So what happens is 30 minutes after you're done, you have all these little lines where your tire was, and even though you went over that spot, because it's so plush and moist, or however you want to think about it, the blades of grass were still down until you were long gone, and then they come back up. And it looks like you're a moron who doesn't know to overlap the blades. So you end up doing that. The last time I did it, I had to mow it 3 times. I'm like, I'm not mowing my lawn 3 times. There just isn't enough time. It's exhausting. I'm like, so I just gave up finally, and many years of mowing my own lawn. I'm like, I'm not mowing the front. Not with that grass. It's just I don't have 4 hours to do that, to do yard work. So unfortunately, I gotta pay somebody to do. I don't pay them. My wife does, and I don't look at the bill. And that's how I can sleep at night. Because I used to mow my parents' lawn as a kid. And I didn't get beans for it, and I still have that like ingrained in me. I'm like, I'm not paying you that kind of money. I used to only get $5. Come on, I'll double it. I'll give you 10. And I'm gonna say I don't mind doing it, but one of the things that's really frustrating for me is to spend a lot of effort doing something and it still not come out well. You know, you're getting sweaty. You're spending a significant amount of time outside. You're getting even more sun, which I don't really need to get more sun. And you're giving it your all, and there's some condition that it's just not turning out as well as you'd like it to, and it's very frustrating. So that only happened last year. That only happened last year because I was like, why is this grass? The grass is definitely more resistant to insects. The other thing I notice is if you have a grass that's really, really nice, or it's consistent, you put, it's all of one type, you really notice when you get interlopers. And interlopers is little birds that come in and poop on your lawn. Because we have this, like, they don't come in all the time, but I've seen this flock. I guess there's still a flock if they're not flying, of ibises. I'm going to call them ibises. They may actually not be that, but little white bird, small, curved beak that's rose shaped. And they come in a little pack, and they come in and they're looking to eat insects off your lawn and stuff. And they come in and through the neighborhood, and they're cute when you see them but they're pooping all along the way. So they're pooping the other seeds that they ate from something else. So then you get these patches or individual other little weeds or other bits of grass of other types. So it's like you never notice that when you have kind of a mishmash lawn, or you mow, whatever it is. It's very noticeable. Then it's like, man, these damn birds come in here and and do that. I have that taking over my lawn. You hate zoysia. Oh, it doesn't grow here. Maybe we're not talking about the same one. I don't know. It's really thinly blade. I don't like the generic one. I think it's called centipede. It's the one that has little tall sprigs that splits in it too. I hate that. But the standard grass here in Florida in neighborhoods it's called St. Augustine. It's got kind of a thick blade. The blade it's probably that thick. And it looks really good, but the end, it's just not. I mean, everybody has that. You just you treat it, and the insects just come in and have a field day with you all the time. Oh well. Okay, then we got this gun crew. If there's zoysia, send it my way. Nah, mine's all filled in. The problem is you get some other interloper type thing. But we couldn't keep the St. Augustine grass growing worth a damn. There'd be patches and it's too dry. Oh, it's too wet. Oh, it's mole crickets. It just. And I don't mind working out there, but like I said, I don't want to slave away for a couple hours and it look like crap. If it's going to look like crap, I don't want to slave away at it. I'll sit in here and paint. So anyways, I'm scheduled to play some 3 games of Wings of Glory. What else? Some cursed game. I don't know if that's any good. That's like the last game I'm playing. I'm like, I needed to sign up for something. I said, maybe I won't show up for it. I noticed last time, I think you've been listening long enough to remember this. The last convention I went to, one of the oh shit moments I had was, which convinced me I'm never going to run a game at a convention ever again. Ever, never. I'm picking who plays in my games. I'm sorry. But this guy went, and we were playing a big game of Lion Rampant. And this guy opposite of me, he played with 28 millimeter figures, wanted to move 10 figures, so he just grabbed them like this. He put his fingers in between all the figures, like this, just grabbed them, and then just threw them down like, a foot away where he was going to move them to. And I'm like, Yeah, I'm not letting somebody do something like that, or I may not lay hands on him, but I will cuss every one of his ancestors, starting with him on back. That's just, no. You should, you should take better care of other people's things than your own. And, well, maybe he treats his stuff like crap or doesn't have any, but the GM of the game was just, his mouth was agape. And I noticed that that particular GM, who's a GM that I really like playing his games, he does an excellent job, isn't running any games this convention, so it probably scarred him too. But I've said it before, I really don't like gamers. You know, some, yes, but some people just, I don't want to be around. You know, just like some people you work with. You probably don't like some people you work with. That's okay. It's all right not to like people. They bring it upon themselves. I'm sure people don't like me. Oh, well. I don't lose any sleep at night over it. I'm not out there damaging their figures. I have lots of faults. One of them is not doing damage to your figures. It's going to cause you hours of having to repair them. Okay, that looks like it's sealed up pretty well. It's kind of hard to tell because of the color difference. And Gnaru, welcome. I think we're doing your gun cruiser. Well, I'm sure you're not Soviet. You know what I mean. That's my goal for this weekend is to get this little 76 millimeter and the three gun crew with it. Well, it's actually these two came with it, and then I'm going to throw a Plastic Soldier Company dude as well. These both have caps, so I'm going to do heck this guy with a cap as well. We're going to try to get all three of these guys painted and the gun this weekend. We'll see. That may be like, you know, my daughter's visiting for the weekend, so I got to do stuff with her. I told her I was going to take her to the range, so she's been wanting to go for a little while, so we're going to do that today. At least that's what the plan is. And we got to get out of the house. People can come in the house and stuff like that. Okay, so while these guys dry, we're not going to fire the airbrush up for this. We've got our Vallejo primer, which we're going to hand paint on this gun. And we can paint him. And we may have to wait on the other two guys. I'm getting low on this stuff. I haven't airbrushed in, well, since the house has been on the market, so over a month for sure. I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to keep this closed. I don't need very much of this. Let's get this out of the way where it's more difficult to spill. And there's a certain brush I wanted to use for this. Here we go. Now, how can we grab this little bastard without getting all this stuff all over me? And how about the little locking tweezer? There we go. And this stuff is hand painted is even better than airbrushing. This stuff's pretty amazing. because it's self-leveling. Which means if you put too much in one spot, generally it's not noticeable. Well, I ran through that in no time. I'm putting too much push and pull on the brush right now to be able to hold it from that tiny little spot. We'll do most of this that we can. And actually, some of my favorite things to paint is my World War II Soviet stuff, because people have this idea that it's boring looking, and it can be. It also doesn't have to be. American stuff's kind of fun too. Only because, as a general rule, it's kind of like all drab. But that doesn't mean you can't give it some personality. And if I get some of this on me, it's not the end of the world. I'd rather not. It's one less step I got to take, but it's going to be, invariably, it's going to happen. Now, let's see if we can, let's do something a little different here. See if we can grab it from somewhere it's been painted, and then get this stuff right here. And this is where it all started. You know what? I need to. Do I have any kind of a little receptacle to put this on? I don't really want to use this. I'll tell you what, I'll use the top part of it. It doesn't really need to have a brim or anything. Just need some of the stuff that's a little bit more fluid. This stuff will peel off. There we go. This thing's all matted in black stuff, like Cujo was matted in blood. That was such a, when I was a kid, I was like, oh man, you gotta go see the Cujo movie. And of course, how am I gonna see it? It's freaking rated R, and I'm freaking 9 years old, like, or 10 or something like that. Saint Bernard matted in blood. Let me bring this over it. Make sure we don't have. Yeah, I don't have a bottle cap. Is that everything's just tucked away. Like, I'm like in minimalist mode, which is, I've actually been really happy, everything being kind of having its place here at the house, but that's why I haven't painted anything in a while. One of the reasons I haven't painted anything in a while. I don't want to make a mess. The Cujo brush was just a little too thick for that. Yeah, everything tucked away, but I still want to work on things. Well, these guys don't have boots. They got puttees. Puttees? The mummy wraps. That seems like a pain in the ass, wearing those in combat. And these guys all had caps. I remember seeing reading an article one time that the Soviets in World War II had a really hard time convincing their own troops to wear helmets. You know, almost like, hey, comrade, you need to wear a helmet. Ah, I'm good. I've just had vodka. I don't need a helmet. And since we can't do anything right now, I'm gonna go ahead and black base these other crew members. The 85 millimeter crew only has 3 figures it came with: a guy with binoculars and 2 guys handling shells. So they can be supplemented if needed with other gun crews that just don't have any shells or anything like that, just to make up the stuff, for casualties and stuff. I'm pretty sure this had at least a 5-man crew. I mean, 85 millimeters is pretty good size piece of ordnance. It's like a German 88, basically. 88's got, I think, got an 8-man crew, something like that. And I'm sure there's situations where sorry, we got to operate with 4. It's not like that. We don't have our full complement. We didn't meet quorum. I guess we'll just sit this conflict out. No, you're fighting, even if it's just one of you. Well, I guess we'll do this guy too. Unfortunately, thing is, he sits on a chair. So if this guy has to bail from this gun or whatever, I'll have to move this figure around without a base. Hopefully he'll die. If this gun comes under HE attack, hopefully they'll kill this figure, and then I won't have to have that problem, No. He's got a peg in his ass, literally, where he attaches. Oh yeah, there we go. He attaches to the gun. But we're not going to glue him in, because I definitely don't want figures that are permanently attached to a gun. Because there might be a scenario where this is like, abandoned or something like that. I don't know what I'm going to do with these AA gunners. because they have the seat molded on with them. All right, is this thing too big to hand paint? No, I've hand painted. I used to hand paint everything by itself. Even if you airbrush it, you still have to come in here and hand paint some of the black or the primer where you missed in different places, or you run the risk of it just the airbrushing just being way too thick in places, trying to reach other things. This is rotatable, isn't it? Is it not? Yeah. Yeah, I left it. Let me loosen it all the way up to the top. Getting to the end of this surface primer. I have used it for several years. I don't remember when I bought it, probably 5 years ago. And I've been pretty happy with it. Probably the least happy with it, airbrushing it, it's very thick. Although I did come across an article about how to thin it down, which, you know, there's conflicting information. Some people will say, oh, it's a primer, you shouldn't be thinning it down. And then you go to other sites and Vallejo even recommends thinning it with their own thinner. So I don't know if that's like a, hey, we can sell even more stuff by having them buy more products of ours, or I plan on trying it and see how it works. I've got actual Vallejo thinner, and thin it. I have to experiment with it. Really got nothing to lose because it just really gums up the airbrush. I really have no airbrushing issues with, especially the AK paints. That stuff goes through no problem. But the primer, it's good stuff. I always use it just to hand paint. Alfarius Omegron, welcome. Sound like a wizard. Go talk to that guy. He's going to cast a spell on you. Wizard. You know, I'm not really a science fiction fan. As far as gaming and stuff like that, I think the only science fiction game I've really enjoyed playing is, I haven't played in a long time, is the computer version of the BattleTech game made by I think one of the developers on that team was one of the actual BattleTech people. And it plays just like the old BattleTech game. You know, and I used to play the old BattleTech game in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. There's some of my first figures that I sold on eBay 20 years ago or something like that. But the computer game, you know, I guess BattleTech is science fiction, and it plays really, really well. It plays just like the game. I really enjoy it. I haven't played it in quite some time, and the art in it is really nice too. The cut scenes between them. Forget who the hell the name of the company is. Mad Rabbit or something Rabbit. I was really impressed with that. But fantasy, you know, speaking of wizards, fantasy, I prefer fantasy to science fiction, but it depends on the level of fantasy. Sometimes they just have a little too much. Magic's a little too powerful, in my opinion, compared to, you know, brute force type of stuff. So, I don't know. I guess there's just kind of different levels of stuff, but I am a big fan of the Diablo series of games. That's where I've done most of my fantasy type gaming, so to speak, and it's the only game I can get the family to play. My daughter's not interested in playing it anymore, but I can get the wife to play it, so. I don't mind playing wizard type characters in that, but never know what I'm going to talk about. Cujo or Diablo or but I haven't done face-to-face gaming in probably 4 months. Just the conditions to do it are just not. It's just too damn hot to do it. So I look forward to doing some of that in the convention. If I may actually not enjoy it, who knows? But that's what computer games I think are really good for. Console games. It allows you to get your game itch scratched, and then you can go back to do the hobbies. I mean, it doesn't help anything for this. This is the creative. The other one is just, just fun, AK Interactive is a blast to use in general, pretty much is my favorite paint. Yeah, I like it too, as well. I don't care for it much hand painting. It can work. It's just a little too watery, but for the airbrush, absolutely. It's a blast. I have a fair amount of it. So, Vallejo and AK are definitely my favorite too, without a doubt. And the Games Workshop, their paint was great way back when, and then they got sorry in the middle, and it's okay now, but the bottles just aren't what they used to be. They're not bad. They're not bad at all. And I have a fair amount of them. These aren't bad, but they're not as good as these were. This was the shit. When this stuff came out, I don't know when it came out. When I discovered it in the late 1980s, that was the shit. They smell good. They're acrylic. I'm not huffing it, but you don't want something that's, toxic smelling. They cover well. Really, really good stuff. But when you have a ton of paints, and all you got to do then is either, hey, let me try this new color, or let me replace this color. That's when you can really get cranking. But man, buying paints originally to get off the ground, that's expensive. That's really, really expensive. Especially if you're like a new painter. As a new painter, you're not going to be very good at it. You're going to see these things. You're like, man, these guys are painting like works of art. How am I going to do that? And like, oh, every pot's like $6. Like, that's just kind of another detriment to getting more people into the hobby. I don't know if I'd want to do miniature gaming like this if I'm not creating some of the stuff, because it just turns into another video game, right? Like everything's created for you. You just show up and roll dice or press buttons, This is what I call the therapeutic part. And a lot of people just aren't interested in it. Let me not grab that by there. This kit has a lot of this Vesda stuff is much more to scale than other manufacturers, which of course means it's kind of easy to break because it's made close to the correct size that things are. The machine guns are flimsy is probably not the wrong word, but just more delicate. Marcus, good morning. Yeah, this is a beast of a weapon. And the interesting thing is this ended up getting used as the 88 did by the Germans in a direct fire roll at times. But, the 88 had already been used in a direct fire roll in France. So by the time they fought the Soviets, they already knew that gun had direct fire potential a year earlier. And I'm not so sure that they did that with, the 85, if it's an anti-aircraft gun, I think it only has HE. or I don't really know about that. I don't know if these guns would have had any armor piercing ammunition issued to them. But even if it fired HE, it's a big gun firing HE, and you're if you're trying to take out 1941 Panzers, none of them have really good armor. I mean, you in Operation Barbarossa, the most you're going to have is armor wise is you may have like a Stug. A Stug would probably have the most armor of anything, and they might have 50 millimeters to the front. That's about it. A Stug, a Panzer IV-E. I think the F1s were just getting into service. Something like that would have the most frontal armor. It's only like 50 millimeters. I don't think anything even had 60 at that point. So an 85 millimeter HE round is going to be nasty to anything in the side, and of course it's a long range weapon, certainly by anything else standards. So I don't know if they made a armor piercing ammunition for this thing in 1941. Well, they had just already figured, if things get bad, we'll direct fire this at some Panzers. All right. So that one's done. Let's go ahead and paint this little flimsy thing. This thing's really, really... This is one of these, like, you're not allowed to move this thing. Let the GM rotate this gun. It's definitely rotatable. Where is the split? The split is on this hole. There we go. Uh-oh. Where'd this little guy come from? Oh, okay. It's the little handle there for that. All right, we'll put that off to the side. It's already falling apart. And we've tried to be delicate with it. So somebody was asking me, so why aren't you going to base your guns? And I mentioned this the other night, but I don't think there's very many of you guys on. How many of you guys on here right now? 6? All right, I'll bring it up again. So I don't want to base my guns because then it's fine if they're going to be out in the open. But if they're like in between buildings or they're behind a wall or, a low wall or something like that, the figures are going to be individually based. So if you have this thing on a base, then you have to put this on top of another base, which is on the base as well. It just becomes a little awkward looking. And I mean, really, what is the purpose of having the guns based other than maybe durability? But I think these guys just they don't weigh anything. So as long as you're not crushing them with something, they should be just fine. Yeah, I've painted some with the AK wateriness. I prefer the Vallejo. I can do it, and that kind of gives everything a purpose. The Vallejo can airbrush too, but the AK airbrush is a hell of a lot better than the AK. I don't even have to thin it. I don't thin it at all. It doesn't ever jam in the airbrush. And that's cool. One has one purpose, one has another purpose. They're both Spanish paints. They're both kissing cousins. I think one of the guys, I think that one guy worked for the other one or something like that. I mean, there's some kind of there's like a backstory, I think, between the two. Like Adidas and Puma. I don't know if it's two brothers that fought over it, but there's definitely it's definitely my two favorite paints, without a doubt. And I've got all the Vallejo colors, so there's really no reason to buy any more Vallejo. I'm only going to be buying AK for now. So, I just didn't want to fire up the airbrush, which I can't do right now, just to paint this stuff black when you can prime like this fine. I could even paint the green hand paint, and I may end up doing that anyways. But I got a lot of green things to paint. I got 6 Soviet trucks, those, the GAZ gas trucks, Ford Model A type inspired. Got those to do. I know all this stuff won't be on the battlefield at the same time. It's just, I'm just building models, and with the intention that at some point you could potentially play a game with them. But I'm not doing it the other way. Like, all right, I want to play a game, so let me build some models for it. And of all the paints that I have, and I've had lots of different paints, but all of the paints that I currently have, the one I like the least, and I would still buy more of it, but it's definitely the one I would buy the least, is hell, I don't know what it's called. It's the Danish paint, whatever it's called. Model Army Builder, whatever, the Army Painter one, because it's just more gummy. It doesn't behave as well. But I got about a dozen of those colors. Well, it's just different sources. Like, I'll go to the show. They'll have a lot of Army Painter stuff there, and they may have some Vallejo, no AK. I go to this store in Tampa that's spectacular, and you can mail order from, called Spray Gunner. They carry every AK paint there. Period. No Vallejo, no airbrush. So you just have to find out. Okay, where am I going? Okay, well, I'll pick up some paint. What do they have there? They have one of these 3. All right, okay, cool. I'll get that one. So I do have my preferences, but it doesn't mean I won't use other things. I probably would not want to airbrush Army Painter. That'd be a pain. I don't like anything that I have to use a certain thinner to thin it, just because I am a noob. I've gotten better at it, but I am a noob airbrushing compared to hand painting. I've been hand painting for almost 40 years and airbrushing for 2. So, even with all the advice I've gotten off of YouTube, which some of it is good, some of it is bad, but you still have to do your own personal experimentation to see what works for you. I'm never going to airbrush to the level that I hand paint, and I'm okay with that. I've accepted that. I can't be a master at everything, but as long as you're getting better at it every time you do it. The biggest improvement that I ever saw with myself airbrushing was the day that I primed like 40 or 50 vehicles with this stuff. And I had to deal with this stuff gumming up. And it's only a problem because you have to stop and take, but the AK paints are incredible. You don't have to touch them. They're just put them right out of the bottle. Now, let's see if we can get in all the cracks and nooks. And we'll glue that little wheel on there afterwards. No, we're gonna get some of this black shit on me for sure. But this stuff is really amazing to hand brush paint, because what I used to use way back when, the first stuff I came across was Model Master Acryl Black. So it was acrylic, because I like having something that comes out of the faucet that's able to clean my brushes. I'm a big fan of that. Once I discovered acrylic paint way back when. I'm like, I don't want to do anything other than that. So it was acrylic, but it's not made anymore. And it also would get really gummy. Not unlike this in some ways, but it would flow really well. It would have some properties of like you would see like in an enamel paint, that it flows really well. Not as well as this. This stuff flows incredibly well. It's resistant to pooling and everything. But they stopped making the Model Master Acryl many years ago. So I ended up switching to enamel Model Master. They stopped making that too. So I'm like, all right, well. Yeah, Rust-Oleum bought testers, and the first thing they did, I don't know if this is officially what they did, but from my vantage point of what I can see is all the products that I used were discontinued. And they kept the old little shitty ass bottles that I don't know who the hell, I think this just is try to bait people into buying that stuff, but that stuff's worthless. But they got rid of a lot of the stuff that I was using, including the clear coat I used to use, the lacquers, which ended up, that's actually what got me to buy an airbrush in the first place, is I used as a sealant, I used the Model Master Clear for so long, and I was so happy with it. And when I discontinued it and I had to go to something else, the quality control on the nozzles, on Krylon stuff, other things was just so bad that I wasn't able to go through a whole bottle of it before it would gum out, even if I held it upside down and sprayed it. So I'm like, and the other products started smelling so bad that I'm like, my wife would be like, what are you doing in there, in the garage? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just spraying it. I'm not really breathing it in. She's like, that smells terrible. I was like, yeah, it does smell terrible. So I'm like, let me go get an airbrush. So that was really the catalyst for me getting an airbrush, was just to be able to seal with something that didn't smell like, I was gassing people. Army Painter, you're still using their whites and grays, and yes, they need serious thinning each time. Also, the dark gray consistently splits into components. Interesting. AP speed paints are good though, better budget friendly. I don't know if they've got those here in the States. Hey Kevin, good morning. Early morning for you. Out in Arizona, Stan. AP. I don't think they have those here. The craft paint. I think everything has its purpose. I use craft paint to paint my backgrounds. I think it works just fine. One advantage of craft paint is that it has more filler than it does pigment, because the pigment's the expensive part, and it means they're really flat. So, if I'm painting backgrounds, which I haven't done that many, I really should get off my what and paint more. But I'm kind of in this mode of like, I don't feel like doing that, and I won't do it. Kind of the opposite of what I was doing before. Like, I got to get these guys done by a convention. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm never going back to that. I'm never going back to, I got to get this done by this weekend. Nope. No, not doing that. So this stuff is really hard to get off your hands, okay? Because it has some polyurethane type properties to it. So, I already did a video on this. Take some hand sanitizer, and it comes right off. Unbelievable. Well, it's unbelievable this stuff is so difficult to get off your hands to begin with. So, and I'm always a bit paranoid about leaving paint on my hands. I'm afraid of it transferring to something else that I pick up, and then I have to undo something I've done. It's an easy enough fix. It's nice to have around. And if you don't think you've got enough paint on these, you can always run hand sanitizer in these as well, but we're going to be using those shortly. See if this stuff dried up a little bit here. Keep my craft paints thin, use it on all. And least favorite paint is probably Pacific 88. Local Russian brand I tried because, well, I wasn't sure if Vallejo AK would be imported there. Pacific 88, never heard of it. But I guess it doesn't need to be imported. I used to use Tamiya a long time ago. And I was really happy with it through the airbrush, but that was one of the first paints that I tried that was acrylic. And I was really happy with it, but it's, I think, more of an alcohol base, and it reacts weird if you're using a brush that's wet. Oh, we need to get this off. I don't want to be looking at that. They're not bad. The greens and browns pretty neat, but some colors just miss hard. Yeah. Okay, speaking of greens, let's see if I have it here. And I may not have it right here because, like I said, I'm kind of in between different things. You know what? I've waited to do this long enough. I think now's the time to do this. Let me, nah, I put it away. This is a little thing that I picked up. I want to say this is Miniature Building Authority. And this is a little bits box type thing. See, look, even when I tried to get all the paint off, I didn't get all the paint off. Incompetence in action. I had one job to do. There was a little bits box that they were selling at the show. Miniature Building Authority. They of course make all the pre-built buildings in 28 millimeter, a scale that I don't really get involved in. But they did have this scouring through. I mean, literally, it's like a bucket of different stuff, and they had this little, almost like a little diorama piece. Let's see if I can get it on the. Let's see if I could be competent and get it on the screen. See that looks like it. That looks all right. Enough writing and stuff on it. But it looks like a T26 S or a T26 model 1939 turret with some kind of a crew member here in a helmet buried under some rocks. And I'll be damned if that isn't almost exactly 1/72nd scale, 1/76, something like that. So this is, Battlefield, I think Battlefield scatter that can be on there. Looks pretty decent. Looks like it's got some machine gun holes here in the turret. Like they were trying to shoot into that slit and they didn't make one, or maybe they did, and I don't know. But this is almost exactly the same size as, here's the turret from the UMMT model, T26S. And if anybody wants to complain about Rodin models, oh, they're too detailed, they're too flimsy, you've never built one of these before. These are extra flimsy. That doesn't mean I won't finish them. It's just, I don't really mind the photo etch. I just hate what you have to glue the photo etch with. You can't use weld cement. That's pretty close. It's close enough for government. You know what it is? This is probably like 1/76 scale. This is 1/72. But good battlefield scatter. But these are, if you don't have the patience, these are definitely a trial of patience. But I got 4 of these little Soviet tanks. And, I always think it's very ironic that you have this model that has all these photo etch parts on it for extra detail, but then they can't give you either one of the 2 turret top hatches to be even possibly open. It's not even an option to open them. I just think that's very ironic, But I like the modern turrets. I like this type of turret on the BT7s, and I like this turret on the T26s. It looks a lot better than the square off one, which is, I've got 2 of each already built with a square off one. So, did I ever paint hoplites? I painted one Athenian hoplite. You very much prefer all my paints to behave in a somewhat similar way. Absolutely. That's true. Yeah, that can be a challenge. So the Rodin kits, that have built these armored cars, these things are, they got a lot of parts, but they fit together well. But the instructions are lacking. Their instructions are lacking on most things. If I didn't have the internet, it'd be a lot more difficult. But those UMMTs are another level above that. But I'll whoop their ass too. I'm not worried about it. All this is a lot easier than just suffering through a day at work, at the workplace. I think if you work at a place where your job is kind of difficult and really challenging, you come here and it's like, oh, 100 parts? No problem. A piece of cake. I got this. All right, what I'm looking for is seeing if my Russian green is here. Because if it is, I'm going to go ahead and hand paint this guy overall, because we're going to end up giving it a wash as well. And that way that takes a little bit of drying time. Let me see if I can do this from, I'm going to have to stand up, I think, be able to reach that. And if it's not here, it's in the garage. And I've got the AK greens out there, but Russian green, here we go. They're almost the same. And I'm gonna do some of the, they're damn near the same color. Russian green. What time is it? 7:30? Almost 7:30. I know I can be on here till 9. Nah, I won't punt and paint the rest of them black and then do all of them in green. I'll just do the one. I'll just do the one for now. We got lots more Soviet stuff to do. We got 3 crash booms and a 57. I like doing the 1941 stuff before we get carried away with the later war stuff. All right. Where is a brush that we're going to abuse, unfortunately? I guess we could use this one. It's not really... Let's get all that black paint out of it. Just when you've cleaned it. It's not really clean if you keep getting paint out of it. I did a video on this this is my discovery. Maybe somebody else discovered it as well, but I didn't watch the video of them discovering. The only thing I really can take claim for that I can think of right now is just kind of putzing around and found out that hand sanitizer works great to take the freaking little bits of dried paint, even if it's acrylic dried paint, right out. It doesn't refurbish the bristles, but if you don't brush it really hard, you're not really damaging the bristles for the most part. Put it in water to neutralize that. We all learn shit from other people. You can't help it. Sometimes you learn stuff you don't want to do, like, ooh, I saw what that guy did there. I don't like that at all. Or learn mistakes from other people. We got a mixing ball in there we can hear. And the AK paints come with a free mixing ball in them. Oh, I know what I hate about AK paints. There's only one thing I hate about AK paints. And I really don't like this about them. Is that the seal, and I don't have one of them here. They're all in the garage. I think they're all in the garage. Because it's where the airbrushing is. Oh, here's one. Nope. No, this is Army Painter. They have a different color thing as well. The seal between the bottle tip and the cap has more space than the Vallejo. So when you shake them, you can tighten it all the way down. When you shake them, some of the paint gets the first time you shake an AK paint, it's not unusual to have seen the inside of the bottle cap to look like this. There's that much spillage in it, and I really don't like it. That's it. I really like them other than that. It's small inconvenience, but, I don't think that was by design. But shit happens. I don't do stuff right all the time either, so. Use spit. My spit's not as powerful as yours. Used to use spit to shape the brushes, you know. I joined a Facebook group that had a, what was the name of it? I joined it only because of the frickin' name of it. Brush Lickers United. I'm like, well, that's really talented name. Let me join it. And it was a painting forum, and I was just basically a lurker. The first time I posted something, it was in regards to Games Workshop paint, and people there were apparently on the Games Workshop payroll, and they didn't like that I had anything negative to say about their preferred deity, and blasted me. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to respond. I'm just going to leave this fucking Facebook site. Didn't go back. It's like, if that's how you guys are going to be. I call things like I see them. I mean, I'm not on nobody's payroll. I like Games Workshop, and their paint was great. And they, for whatever reason, decided to change their bottles to a hard plastic, and they didn't get a good seal on them. And they didn't like that I said that, you know? And I'm like, look, I've got paint that's 40 years old, not 40 years old, but over 30 years old from Games Workshop, and it's still alive. So they got that stuff together. And now they didn't. The paint they're doing now is and their bottles are much better, but they're still not as good as the original ones. And because I didn't pray to the Games Workshop God, I use everybody's paints, and I'm okay with some of the game. I don't like Games Workshop's business practices. They're incompatible with my slow painting style. Let's put it that way, but. So I don't want to be sponsored by anybody. You start making a shitty product, I'm going to call you on it. Especially if you were doing it great to begin with. But Games Workshop does weird stuff. Games Workshop does things like, increases the prices on things, which is fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it's just how things are, inflation and the like. But then they reduce the size of them too. And then to also, have the quality control on something go sideways is the Agrax Earthshade. I used to get a big one that was, I'm a big fan of Agrax Earthshade. That is one thing that Army Painter does pretty good. I just had it. I picked it up by accident. This stuff right here, this strong tone, is actually better than Agrax Earthshade in my opinion, because Agrax Earthshade can get gummy and this doesn't. So Army Painter actually, in my opinion, does this better than Games Workshop. That's why your Vallejo bronze cap looks absolutely catastrophic. So I don't have an example. Vallejo bronze cap, yeah. And another thing is that had the same problem when testers went plastic. Yeah, plastic doesn't work. You need the best container for sealing. The best combination is a container that has. I'm not a scientist guy. I'm not a science guy, but let me explain it to you in common terms. Is a container that has some flexibility to it. Okay? And then a top that also has some flexibility to it. And when they work together, you get a great freaking seal. But to have hard on hard, and that's what Games Workshop went to in the middle phase. I don't have any of those. The lids used to be black, and this used to be plastic and clear, and it was almost like octagonal. It was either 8 or 10 sided or whatever, and those were just a disaster. I literally bought I was gonna say bacon bits, iron bits or something like that. Used it once, put it back, came back several months ago to use it again. The whole thing was dried, and that happened to me on several colors. I'm like, this doesn't work. This just does not work. This stuff is okay because this is hard down here, or pretty hard. I think it's got a little bit of flex in it, but this is soft, so you get a decent seal with these. It does. It is the only complaint. The only complaint I have about these guys, and it's not the price of it, is that when you open it, sometimes it has a hard time staying open. Other than that, I really like this stuff. This is what I use for my metals now. So. Yeah, it's funny because I actually have taken a liking to Games Workshop paint again, and now I find that a lot of places don't carry it. When I used to work at a hobby store, one of the early '90s, one of the problems that we had with Games Workshop, or Citadel as we still called it back then, it took me a long time to stop calling it Citadel. I think Citadel's a better name. Was you had to put in a minimum order. You had to order like at least $250 worth of merchandise. You couldn't just reorder like 3 packs. You had to like, they wanted a lot of your business or none of your business at all. I don't know if that's different now. I suspect it's probably only worse. But you know, the thing about Games Workshop is, one of the problems that they have, and that's just me looking at it as the outsider, is they spend a shitload of money on advertising. So that creates a lot of overhead. And of course, that's also why they get a lot of business, because people see their products. And they're painted by masters. I mean, the people that they get to paint, you don't ever see Games Workshop promoting Games Workshop figures that are painted haphazardly or poorly. You know, their stuff is painted by, you know, pro level people. So they spend a lot of money on that, or a lot of effort on it, and they got to recoup those costs. So that's actually not the problem I have with them. I just don't like that they don't support their. Well, they don't do historical stuff, so you know they're not really in my kind of thing, anyways. They do proprietary type things, and it's not something I'm particularly interested in. You know, if all of a sudden, if there was no such thing as historical miniatures, or they were banned, or you couldn't do historical miniatures, I don't know if I'd still paint figures. If I had to do like science fiction and fantasy, like I couldn't do, you know, medieval or World War II stuff, I don't think I'd paint. I'm just not interested in it. You know, I don't need to. I do enjoy painting, but you know, the other stuff doesn't just isn't for me. Some dictator comes around. Okay, you can't do anything historical. Okay, so we just got a coat of the green, and I dry brush it on purpose because I want some of the black left over. And we're gonna go heavily on this afterwards, and then we're gonna dry brush this color again. We'll add in not dark sand. Actually, maybe dark sand. I don't remember what the hell it's called anymore. Lighten it up with basically a sandy type color, several levels, and then it'll look pretty good. It looks. I'm really happy with how the stuff turns out that way. So, all right, I need to get a soda or some kind of refreshment because I'm doing a whole lot of talking, which I don't mind, but I need throat lubrication. That's what we'll call it today. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back with my beverage of unusual size. In this case, it's an unusually small size. They sell those sodas at the store that I think are like 4 ounces or something like that. I'm like, that's like a freaking gulp. These things aren't much bigger. What are they? 8, 7, something like that? 12? This doesn't look like 12 ounces. This doesn't look like the same size as a can. Been really happy with getting another one of these cup holders that sits off the periphery of the table. And I got one that I use for my water, my paint water. Kind of hard to spill on your table if it's not on your table. And then the other one for a soda. I could probably stand a third one, but that way I can have one for water I drink and a soda or coffee. Usually if I have water, I keep it on the ground. I don't mind it spilling. If something's going to spill on the ground, it might as well be drinking water. All right. You do need to, even though this is dry, I want it to dry a little bit more because sometimes this will lift this up, which isn't a big deal because it ends up getting brushed back over it, but I like for it to sit a little bit. So with that said, I didn't want to keep this with, as I like to say, live paint on it. We'll do the same thing with the 85 millimeter. Big nasty. No gun shield. In Soviet Russia, we don't need gun shield. We use meat shields. I love playing the Russians. They're a lot of fun. I do have 3 or 4 Commissar figures. I need to paint one of them. They look like they would be character. Now remember, the game I'm playing is actual scale, so, you know, when you're this far away from the gun, you're like, 30 feet away from the gun. So it's what you see is what you get, so. Really not a thing as off-board artillery, because, I mean, you're playing on a 4x8 foot board, longest distance is still like 200 meters. It's pretty much point blank range. Trying to use something similar lately, but using colored primer as sort of unifying shadow color pretty much replaces wash's step for me now. Still struggling with appropriately dark rattle can primers. Yeah, I've given up on the rattle cans. They just smell so bad, I'm not used to my hobbies having a smell. And it's not that I'm concerned about health, but it's just it's unpleasant for all the other people you live with. Even if you're in the garage, I have the garage open and I don't want something so nasty that I have to use a mask with it. I'm like, not a fan of masks to begin with. So I live in an environment that's extremely hot, so I don't need to do something that makes it even hotter. So the main reason I got away from the rattle cans is the quality control on the nozzles is just not there. I was paying for this much paint, only being able to use a third of it. Again, one of those issues that we didn't used to have. The rattle cans have been using them forever. Find a reddish-brown primer, but ended up with something bright mortar color instead. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully you test it on something like not some of your figures, spray it on some cardboard or... I'm a huge fan of this stuff. Anything you can use that people just throw away, some recycled material, great. It's free, nobody wants it, perfect. Amazon boxes. You guys get Amazon in Russia? I think you do. I'm a big fan of Amazon. I'd rather go to the actual store and get it, but the store doesn't carry it, so what am I supposed to do? I don't know that I have a gun big, I mean, a truck big enough to pull this thing. Not that that's an issue, but I don't think a GAZ AAA can pull this. I mean, it probably can. It just probably can't pull it really well. I mean, I don't know. Those things probably have. Hell, everybody's trucks in World War II probably have less than 100 horsepower. I bet everybody's trucks in World War II have less than 100 horsepower. You know, I think a Kubelwagen has like less than 50 horsepower. Just something ridiculous by today's standards. Would clear coat out of doors, but found didn't work well in high temperature. I've never had a problem with the clear coating. I've only had a problem if you lay it on too thick, and then it activates sometimes it doesn't activate it. It really messes up with the colors underneath. Sprayed on a random miniature, was surprised, had a fun time working around bright primer anyways. It was one of those happy little accidents for me. Oh, that's good. You turn into a positive. As long as it's repairable, it's good to make mistakes. You know? And it's a good thing because we're all going to keep making them, unfortunately. You know, there's some things I don't really want to learn on the fly. Like, I would like to learn how to lay like tile, like for a house. I just don't want to learn on my house, you know? Like, you could screw something up. You know, and it's just one of those things where it's like, you know, if you do something long enough, you can kind of foresee when a problem is going to happen way before it's too late to correct it. And if you've never done something before, you don't have that sixth sense of when that's going to happen. And that's why I like hand painting, because I got a really good sixth sense about hand painting. I can either fix a mistake or something that doesn't turn out how I like it, or I can foresee, like, if I keep going down this road, it isn't going to turn out how I was expecting it to. So I could kind of, you know, avoid those type of situations and save myself some time, disappointment. If you've never done something for the first time, like airbrushing, for me, or I airbrushed back in the 90s, but man, it's just totally different. There's totally different paints now, and you know. All right, we're gonna hold this by the barrel end. We need more of this, more of the green goddess sauce. I got my little Soviet gun crewmen, and I haven't painted them either. It's just kind of everything was just kind of put on hold when I kind of had the whole house in limbo. I got plenty of vehicles. I got plenty of vehicles done. It's time to do some guns. The German heavy mover was $250. That's a lot. Amazon's no longer available there. Okay, man. Have a good one. See, did we make this so we could rotate it up? Yes, we did. Not because I need it rotated up, but just so you can get to all the nooks and crannies a little easier. Oh, maybe you're not in. I thought you were. I thought you were in Russia. Maybe you were able to leave. Well, like I said, this doesn't have to be a perfect science at this point. This is just a base color. So I hold it from the tip end, and if I don't get everything on there, that's fine. The end needs to be blackened anyways. It's kind of a freebie. And hell, I might as well do the 37 too. Might as well. We're on this joyride. Might as well finish it. Go for it, painting. Welcome back. Oh, we're actually doing some painting. I feel like it's been many, many months since I've done that, but doesn't really matter as long as you don't forget the skills you've developed for 4 decades. Now, if I was building like aircraft, I probably wouldn't want to hand paint this because I have a feeling I'd want my aircraft to look a little bit less rough, only because they're not in the dirt as much. They could be. You could have, heavily weathered aircraft, but generally aircraft are a hell of a lot less weathered than they are, things that are playing around in the mud and stuff. And at some point, I'm going to build some aircraft. Stuff that could interact with the ground. Some Russian planes or a Fischler Storch or something like that. It could be part of some kind of a mission objective, but yeah, we'll try to take some videos of the show. Just kind of give you an overall picture of what it is. It's not a very big show, but it's. I guess numbers are only so important. I think I read one thing recently that Historicon at its height was still not even 5,000 people. I was thinking it was a lot bigger than that, but I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as you've got people that are playing what it is that you showed up to play. I was thinking Historicon was like 20,000 or something like that, but I guess there's just only so many people that are going to go to that. Those other fantasy and other shows are much bigger, Origins and Gen Con, but that all is geared towards stuff I'm not particularly interested in. If I didn't paint stuff, I don't know that I would play board games. Board games I don't have a problem with board games. I wish there were more board games that were ported on computer. And I have a few of them, and that just allows you to the game setup. And the rest of it can play like a board game, but just muddling through the rules and getting stuff wrong and shit like that. Just doesn't my doesn't have a big appeal for me, especially when it's not something where I can be creative, like, painting stuff for it and things like that. If it comes already done for you, it might as well just be in computer game format. Because you could, like, okay, I can't finish this. Save, done. Not like, all right, write down where all the pieces are. That's like, no, that's just not my thing. The computer game can look like the board game, and actually, there's many of them out there that are very attractive. There's lots of very attractive board games. I'd rather just have something that is ported to a computer and you can't play it wrong. You can't accidentally, oh, I moved too far. Well, the computer doesn't let you to. I mean, unless there's a bug or something like that. So you're not like, oh, this is a great game, and you're like, you mean you played the same one? I was like, no, it's not, and you've been playing it wrong all along, and I would just rather that stuff being ported to computers. But there's a lot of really attractive board games. Okay. Let's paint this little bastard. Oh, that didn't work too well. How about I just grab it, and when we get closer, we'll do that other method. This thing was a beast to trim off the sprue, because not only is the 37 millimeter gun damn near close to scale, which means it's pretty flimsy and can break easily. It also had the connecting sprue, the connecting points to the main sprue it came on the top. If it's on the bottom and you have a gun that's laying like this, it's less noticeable if there's like flash or something on it. But when they put it at the top, man, now you got to really go in there and trim that up. And I had to use my super nearsighted vision to make sure that I got a pretty smooth finish on it so it wouldn't be distracting to the eye. Avalon Hill used to several games on computer. The problem is when they did that, I didn't have a computer. I never had a Commodore 64. I wanted one. My dad did not want to give me one, and I wasn't old enough or had enough money to get my own. So I never played with Commodore 64 stuff. My favorite board game that is ported on computer, although it's never was a board game per se, but it looks like one, is that whole the Shenanigans, I was going to call them. No, the ones made by Shenandoah Studio through Slitherine, or I get Slitherine and Matrix mixed up. I guess because they do the same kind of stuff. I believe it's a Slitherine one. That they made 3 of them. They made, I think it's called Drive on Moscow. One that just vaguely called Battle of the Bulge. And then they made one that was called Desert Fox, which was only ported for the iPad and wasn't finished. And I bought it because we had an iPad at the time. I didn't have a working computer. And I don't even think I got a chance to finish one scenario before the 64-bit apocalypse hit and I lost the game. But I really liked those with the area movement, and it just, I found the level of, I really like them, and I've played them a lot. I really, really like those games. And they look basic, but at the same time, really polished, in my opinion. I think I really like the way they look. And they're of a manageable size. It's not like It's not like, what is it, War in the East or whatever. There's just a quadrillion different stacks of things. You know, it's a good bite-sized option, and a lot of different ways to skin a cat. So yeah, I got both of those on the console, and then when I got the laptop, I got them on the laptop too, and I've completed, I think, just about everything on both of them. So I think that says a lot when you buy a game and you finish every scenario. You get all the you unlock all the stuff by doing all the different missions they ask you to. You know you've gotten a good value out of it by if you've done all that. All right, I think we're done with this. Now we need a brush that we're going to put the wash on. I tend to use these with the clear handle for the washers. I don't know why, but I do. Like, I never played the Bismarck game for Commodore 64. As much as I would have loved to have played that, I wouldn't want to play it now. I'm not much of a retro gamer. I have no interest in going back to EGA graphics, you know. Those graphics that remind me, like, did I put my contacts in? No, I didn't. All right, strong tone. Strong tone that has replaced Igrax Earthshade in my book. It just behaves better. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Army Painter stuff, but this stuff is great. Made in Spain. This one. So this one's not made in Denmark. Maybe I like all the paints that are made in Spain. Power to my people. That's just coincidental. All right. Now, Apple II had a Bismarck game. Oh, didn't have an Apple computer. My dad was kind of a pioneer of using computers. He used them when they first came out and started doing them for his job back when nobody really was using them for that. And it was all IBM machine. He had a different type of machine first that didn't work. I don't remember what the heck it was. But then it was IBM, so. The first computer I had access to was an IBM 286. And, you know, by the time that came, by the time we had one of those in the late 80s, very late 80s, I think very late 80s, maybe 88, something like that. Some of those Bismarck games and stuff were already, you know, long gone. I remember going to there was a hobby store not a hobby store, a computer electronics store in malls. I want to say it was Babbage's, and there was another one that was called Babbage's. That wasn't Babbage's, it was called something else. Electronic Boutique, or I don't remember what the hell it's called, but anyways, it would always have stuff that was for Amiga or the Commodore, or stuff that video computer systems I didn't have. So I always wanted to play that one that had the German tanks on the cover in a Panzer Kiel in gray, Panzer Truppen or Panzer Group or something like that. You know, the graphics, like I wouldn't, you know, I'd rather go to work than play a game that looked like that now. But, you know, back in the day, you know, I was salivating to play anything that was World War II-ish, and never got a chance to play any of those. You know, and you know, some I may not have liked it, and there's some games that are really popular that don't really appeal to me. I never was a fan of. I know that there's a huge amount of people that are a big fan of the series. I never liked Steel Panthers. I did not like the way it looked. It was too difficult to kind of make out what everything. I mean, if they probably redid the game now with more with clearer graphics, they don't have to be better. They just have to be clearer, and the font needs to be better. The font definitely needs to be better. That old font that was just too big. It just didn't appeal to me. You know, speaking of computer ports that are pretty good, the the lock and load port is it's a beautiful looking game as a computer game. You know, a board game on computer. I haven't played it in a while. The AI on it is broken. I never could get the multiplayer to work right. For a game that's so simple, it had a lot of problems sending packages to the other computer. But it's a good looking game. Okay, now we're going to pick some spot over. Let's see, can we pick a spot that's hidden? Maybe not. I think the tire is going to, the tire is going to get weathered anyways. So I don't mind grabbing it by the outside here and making sure we get some on the back portion here. One thing I always thought was really weird about the Commodore 64, I didn't have one, but and this may not be accurate, but it sure seemed like the arrow keys, you only had two of them. And if you wanted to go the other direction, you had to get the shift. So in other words, this button would go left. If you wanted to go right, you had to hold the shift button or control or something and press the same button to go the other way. I'm like, dude, just give me space to do four, you know? It was common later used. You could find Commodore 64 in garage sales for $5. Yeah. Lots of people had really good experiences with them, you know? And some people don't like playing old things. I'm not one that's going to go buy an old Atari 2600 and have fun playing Pitfall. That's just not me. I've done the time. I don't want to do it again. You know, if you're spending time playing retro stuff, you're not playing the newer things. That's just me. Other people can look at it differently. I've done the time. Been there, done that. Same thing with fads. Oh, a couple years ago, people were like, oh, they're wearing all the deck shoes from the 1980s again. I'm like, no, I wore them in the 80s. I don't need to wear them again. There's worse fads, and like in the 90s when all the 70s stuff came back, I'm like, yeah, I'm not wearing bell bottoms ever. Sorry. You still use your Game Boys. Never had one. Never had one. Never was a Nintendo fan. The games were just a little too pacifist for me. Like, I'm a pacifist every day. I want to murder and enslave people when I'm playing a game. Sorry. You know? Other people want to do it in real life, not me. I like leaving people alone and being nice to them. But in a video game set where nobody gets hurt, yeah, I want to do stuff I can never do. Grand Theft Auto, baby. I haven't played that in a long time. Yeah, I'm not a Pokemon hunter. I like doing stuff I can't do in real life. You know, like driving around like a maniac. Video games are great for that. I say that all the time, you know. This guy's driving around like he's, you know, you want to drive like a lunatic? Go play Forza. You know, no reason to do it in real life. And then, of course, we're going to have to stop, let these things dry, because it does take a bit of time for this to dry. And then when we come back, it may not be until in the morning we can go to the next step on these things. And yeah, there's no way I can get the gun and the gun crew done this weekend, but we'll move towards that at some future point where we can finish them. Yeah. That whole, hey, I got to get these guys done for the show or whatever. That's gone. That's way too stress causing. Especially when the workload at work is as annoying as it's been as of late. As a matter of fact, you know, and I've said this before, it's so difficult to take a freaking day off. Just one day off. As a matter of fact, my convention's coming up. I've put in for Friday for one day to take off on Friday for, I don't know, probably since March, maybe even February. And I get yesterday I get an email saying, you know, this job that has an important meeting hasn't had a meeting, I don't think ever. They decided to do it on the Friday that I'm not here. I said, sorry, I'm not going to be here. Like the irony of everything like hitting at once is just like baffling. It's just so damn difficult. Just take one damn day off. You know, I don't get that many days off to begin with. It should be real easy to take a day off and come back. Nope, it's just a nightmare. So, okay, well, I'm not going to kill myself in my hobby and do shit for other people just for, you know, and then people don't show up or the awards go missing or stuff like that. I'm like, I don't need that kind of stress in my life. Let somebody else, let one of those people that's retired do that. Doesn't have enough things to do. So we're almost to the next convention. The guy that was going to take over the DBA stuff still hasn't put up the scores from the last convention. It's just, yeah. Have fun trying to be the Messiah. It's not working out real well. But I'm going to go to the show. I'm signed up to play games. You know, the only thing is if, you know, I kind of waited till last minute. There's some people I don't want to play a game with. There's very few, but there's a select few people, and I know what their names are. I'd rather not play a game with those folks. They just have the wrong attitude, and you know, they're a dick when they're losing, and they're a dick when they're winning. They're just a dick all the time, and it's like, you know, I'm there to have a good time and laugh. You know, that's what my interest in it. I'm not there to deal with people that, you know, are just assholes all the time. I'm an asshole when I'm not playing games. So, anyhow, I don't want to deal with those people. So I get there, I'm not running the game. I don't have any figures there. I don't have to worry about somebody damaging my stuff or walking off with my things or people not showing up or, oh, I got to run this game and now this certain person's in it and I've got to deal with it. It's like, no. I get there and I don't like the people playing the game. I'll just go do something else, you know. Part of me wants to confront that guy that fucked with that other guy's figures and just say, "Oh, you again? You gonna destroy this guy's figures too by just picking them up in a pile?" Oh, well. We'll see how confrontational I get. Hey, somebody needs to stand up to people. You can't just all of a sudden just behave like a fucking idiot and nobody say anything about it. I'll only be nice to him if I'm drinking. I'm not confrontational at all with when I'm drinking. I'm a lover for sure. But sober, yeah, I may say something to you. You deserve it. Find several a-hole and 4K tournaments all the time. Yeah, call them one. You don't have to come to blows with them, but if people do stuff, they need to, they need to. People that don't behave need to stop. You need to stop catering to people that don't behave. It's a social thing. You don't invite somebody over to your house or party and they're an asshole all the time. Like, you know, you're here to have a good time. If you're not having a good time, you need to go find another hobby. Stop bringing people down. I had a guy, this one guy that I knew that has, I don't really game with him anymore. They don't really play the kind of games that I like. But this guy has a really good attitude. He has a really good attitude, does a good job of getting people into the hobby of gaming and teaching them the games. Guy's a little weird. I don't care. He has a good heart. And he wanted to play in DBA for a while. So I finally got him to sit in a game of DBA. And he gets put in this multiplayer game, and I'm on the opposite side of him. I'm not actually directly fighting him. I'm fighting somebody else, which... One of the best experiences I had at the last convention was I was playing this other guy who I'd never met before. I was actually Facebook acquaintances with him. Won't say Facebook friends. I'd never even talked to him. It was one of those, we had kind of a common interest in the hobby. And he befriended me. I usually will take friend requests from anybody as long as it's like war game related, because that's kind of our thing that kind of unites us. But I'd never met this guy before. And I'm playing in this multiplayer game directly against this guy. Sorry, I've switched stories, but look, I'm even getting worked up and I'm drinking something that's not even half caffeine in it. But anyways, and I had such a good time playing with this guy because I felt like there was this honor code. We're both learning the game. We're like, hey man, you forgot about this. And we were helping each other out, even though we were directly, we were helping each other out to learn the game, even though we were directly trying to kill each other. And I enjoyed playing with this individual so much. And he was on the opposite side of me because I felt like there was this honor code. And I feel like when I play, I have a really high honor code for playing the game. It is a social experience, and we're there to get along with each other. I mean, yes, it's combat, and sometimes, it's like my guys need to survive, but there's this understanding that there's this code of honor. So anyways, getting back to the original story, this guy, I finally got him to play DBA, and he's put in this multiplayer game on the other side. And the guy that was the commanding officer of the other side is just a fucking asshole. He's an asshole all the time. This is a guy who had health issues all the time. And because he got a bad lot thrown at him or whatever, he decided to take it out on everybody else who played a game. He's unhappy if he wins. He's unhappy if he loses. No matter what you do is not good enough. It's like, it's a freaking game, man. And, there's dice rules involved. And sometimes the dice don't roll the way you want them to. And it's just part of the game. And this guy killed this friend of mine's spirit so bad he never wanted to play DBA again. And I'll never forgive that guy for it. And well, he's dead now. He passed away from, I guess, health issues. But he was just an asshole all the time, And that's what I will always remember him as. is an asshole that kept somebody, that locally from trying DBA, you know. So, anyhow, when I'm doing the thing that I enjoy doing the most, which is historical wargaming, I'm on my best behavior because this is what makes me the happiest. So if and I would suspect that other people should do the same thing. If you're not being your best person, you're not the happiest doing your hobby, go find a different hobby. Go do something else. Stop bringing people down. Okay, on that note of stop bringing people down, I gotta wait for these guys to dry up. Okay, and then we'll come back and we're gonna dry brush the same color on top of it. Okay, leaving some of the dirty parts. And then we will add, what's the other color that I add to it? It's not dark sand. It's a color that's similar to dark sand. I don't remember what the hell it's called right now. Let's see if I can find it readily. I've only done this many, many times. I just don't remember what the hell it's called. It's not buff. It's the kissing cousin of these two. It is called, maybe it is dark sand. I don't know. I have to go watch my own videos. It's been so long, but it was an idea that I got from somebody else. I was watching their video on YouTube, and you can learn things from other people, that could benefit you. But anyways, we'll catch you guys probably tomorrow morning, and we'll pick up these Soviet guns where we left off. Okay, until next time, enjoy your Saturday, folks, and happy gaming.